just, it was such a brand, her sound, whether she was singing, because she sang in so many different genres of music. She sang from straight ahead jazz, like she did for the Spike Lee soundtrack, that Bill Lee composition B1, to, disco dance hits. But whatever she sounded, whatever she's singing, there was such a brand identity of her sound for us because the texture was so rich. I mean, one of the joys of my life was hanging out with Phyllis and Phyllis singing along with songs that she, in her own, like, she loved to sing, you know what I mean? So at any place, at any time, somewhat even sometimes embarrassingly, she could just burst out into song and sing it the way that she would have sung the song. I'll never forget driving with her one day. We were on our way to a recording session, and I'm driving my little jalopy of a car. I'm just out of college when I met her. So she really welcomed me into her life. So she'd be like, "Okay, we're gonna hang out. We're gonna do this," and I'd be summoned to taking her to wherever we were going. We're gonna meet on the moon today, and you're gonna drive. So I'm here with my little startup car right out of college, my little red Ford Escort, thinking it's not grand enough to take this grand diva to wherever we're going. And one day, Sweet Love came on the radio. She said, "You see a song like this? I should have sang this song." And blah, blah, blah. Why did they give this song? And then she goes,
Anita Baker.
"With all my heart, I love you, baby." And she starts
Oh
to
my
sing it
gosh.
like how
Oh my
she would
gosh,
have
you got
sang
the
it.
tone. I hear it. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So yeah, just an incredible instrument. And you said it perfectly. Her voice was an instrument.
Yeah, and I would argue, and if I'm wrong, correct me. Before Tony Braxton, before Anita Baker,
Yes,
there really is Phyllis Hyman with that really
absolutely.
powerful alto. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely, very fair to say. With that rich contralto, I think of it similarly to Sarah Vaughan also, because even when Sarah Vaughan started singing jazz and became a big jazz star, before that you had Ella Fitzgerald, you had Billie Holiday who had a thinner voice, and then Sarah came with this rich, look at me, this very mature contralto voice. So she was this jazzy. There's a nexus of jazz and R&B and soul that she occupied that I think Anita Baker later on became a bigger star, if you will, with sort of a similar, confluence of genre. And certainly Tony Braxton, who started off with a sort of jazzy, sort of melancholy, moody kind of R&B and made a big hit. So, but Phyllis was an absolute imprint. I mean, one of my last conversations, oddly enough, with Whitney Houston was a long conversation about Phyllis Hyman. And
Really?
Whitney just saying how she loved Phyllis's, instrument, and talking about when they met, and there was a little bit of controversy when they met, and but how she said, Phyllis really empowered Whitney, after they got over the little drama, of the little perceived, I talked about this on one of your shows before, I believe, when an earlier interview, one of the perceived tensions or perceived competitions between them. Once they got over that, Phyllis, gave her card and really her to just reach out and touch. She said, "Don't, she said, people may try to keep us away from each other, but you reach out and call me anytime you need to do so." And
Wow.
Whitney told me that once Phyllis did give her that information, that she said, and I, there was times when I started to tour and I needed somebody, a big sister, to talk to, and I called her and she reached out every time. And that's the part of her legacy that I think doesn't get told enough. And whenever I'm on interviews, I like to talk about that aspect of Phyllis, how she made herself available to mentor. I mean, I was at her apartment on 56th Street, many times when she'd be on the phone with Allison Williams, giving her the lowdown, blah blah blah
Just
blah
call
blah
my
blah blah blah.
name.
Talking to people, talking to other younger fellow artists about artistry. I mean, Phyllis would talk to me about making sure that you look at your contracts or have somebody look at the contracts for you. Make sure you vet any causes that you agree to, any nonprofits that you say you're going to sing for. Really make sure you vet them. I mean, she really took time with people that she got to know and care about, and to really be a big sister and a mentor. And that doesn't get talked about enough. People, I didn't, her death was really hard because I was so young, and I got very busy. And Phyllis was a very like territorial kind of person. Like if she felt like, she wanted access to you, or, I met her when I was sort of up and coming, but in the odyssey of time we got to know each other, I got busier. And when she wanted her time with you, she would call you and boss you around, and and she could get very territorial about that. But I do think that she was lonely. When she passed, I felt badly. I didn't know to the depth of depression, but there were times I remember calling her, and she would say, "I haven't gotten out of this bed in 7 days." She would say things like that. But I didn't
Wow.
know what that really meant. I just thought, well, she's Phyllis Hyman and she's just catching up on her rest. She may have to go on tour. There are times I'd go to her apartment and she would say, "Where are you going? Why are you?" I said, "I got to go meet my friends." Well, tell those friends to come up here. I'll order some food from the shop or just get them to come on up here. She
Wow.
longed for company and people that I think that she felt really comfortable with. She was fascinating. I used to always talk about my Jamaican parents and my parents cooking, and she's like, "Well, when are you going to invite me over to your mother's house, so your mother can make some oxtails for me?" Actually, I want to make them with her. I want to learn how to make them with her. I think she craved friendships. I think she craved family. I think she craved, people that good people that loved her for her, off on stage and off.
Yeah, and for folks who may not know, for our younger listeners, sadly, Phyllis Hyman took her own life at 45 years old, and it was just hours before the Apollo Theater.
Yeah,
I performed at the Apollo Theater, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this show, because for our younger listeners, I want y'all to know who this woman was. I say her name all the time, but I want y'all to
hmm.
know who she was. And
After she passed, there were people who knew her and knew that she took an interest in me, who told me, they said Phyllis was very taken with you because she knew. They said that she believed that she was working on what would be her final album, and she
wow,
wanted to tell her stories musically, and she was looking for songwriters that she could work with that could help her leave some of her personal experiences on records. And she felt that quality in you.
wow,
And when I heard when I heard that after she passed, it was very heavy to hear that she had that kind of trust, you know, um, and that kind of interest, that kind of co-signing, kind of affirmation of me. That was because like I said, I spent time with her and I did not know she was so, she was in so much heartache and pain. I really didn't know. Um there were times I could feel it. Sorry, excuse me.
that's all right.
Um
It's all right.
there were times I could feel it, the heaviness. And I would she took me out to many places. She loved the Shark Bar and she loved this restaurant, Trattoria del Arte. She took me there many times. That was walking distance from her house. But at times when I could feel her burden was getting a little heavier, um, I started to invite her to places with me, and I took her to see a jazz club. There was a friend of mine named Cynthia Scott who sang straight ahead jazz, and I took her to this club with me. I said, Phyllis, this friend of mine is singing. She can really sing. She sings more straight ahead jazz. Would you like to come with me? She asked me a million questions. What time? What time are you picking me? Blah blah blah. Just all this drama. But she said she would come. And I said, Phyllis, I wanted to bring you here because I wanted to see if you'd be interested in perhaps doing some smaller sets, like sets with just a trio, cutting your over. Now I'm really crossing the line, the boundary here, but I said, but maybe shows with a smaller format, where you take the jazz, different interpretations of your R&B stuff or the jazz part of here's that rainy day, the jazz comes you've done, and crafting a different show. I said something you can do, you know, um, in addition to your other touring schedule. I just think that people would really enjoy you in this format. And she said something I'll never forget. She said, Gordon, she said, let me tell you about my fans. She said, my fans are loyal. She said, my fans come and see me when I have a big album out. You know, she said, sometimes they call me, they'll still come and see me 2, 3 years later after that book, after that, record has been out for a while. She said, when your record is hot, sometimes you may play this kind of theater. She said, if you've been touring it 2 or 3 years, you might be at a club, she said, but I have loyal fans who come to see me no matter where I am. And she said, I feel I deserve to give them the full Phyllis Hyman experience. She said hilariously, she said, so that means the shoulder pads, the smoke machines, the whole thing. She said, because I was getting concerned after spending more time with her with, just the overhead of what she was doing. Just the I don't want to say burden, that's too strong a word, but just the gravitas of
Right.
her being on the road, I could feel it was taking a toll. You know, and I didn't see the spreadsheets or anything, but I said, this has got to be taking a kind of, so I could feel that. And that's why I invited her to that show. And she thanked me profusely for bringing her. But she expressed in that evening a dedication to her, a loyalty of her fans, and for giving people the show that she feels that she deserved. She really loved her craft. She loved her fans deeply. She loved her band.